Hello, listeners, and welcome to Anyone Can Move. This is your host, Caroline Gerhardt. I have so been looking forward to this episode of the podcast. This person that I spoke to today just really has done so much and has met so many incredible people. And I think you know, she has one of those careers that a lot of people wish to have. She's experienced a lot of things that dancers look up to throughout their career. And so I felt so honored to be able to talk to her and get to know her a little bit better and get to know more about her experiences that she's had in the dance world. Um, Broadway is such a, pinnacle. It is that what so many people aim for. And so, hearing from somebody who's been there and done it is just a really special experience. And I hope you all think so too. So, for today's episode, I got to speak with Karla Garcia, and she's another guest that I've had on the show where I feel like if we didn't put a time cap on it, we really would have kept finding things to talk about. We had such a great conversation. I hope you all enjoy this conversation as much as I did. So, without further ado, Miss Karla Garcia. Hello, Anyone Can Move listeners. I am so excited today to introduce you to our special guest, Miss Karla Garcia. Hello, Karla.
Yay. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So, just to start off, I'd love it if you could give our listeners some background on your dance career so they can get to know you a little bit.
Sure. So I grew up in the Washington, D.C. metro area, and then I went on to study dance at NYU Tisch School of the Arts. From there, I did my first Broadway show while I was in school, took a leave of absence, and then went on to continue and do several other Broadway shows like West Side Story Revival and Gigi. And I toured with the show Wicked and Adam's Family and a company called Bad Boys of Dance. And I did a little stint on So You Think You Can Dance on Fox. I was a principal dancer in NBC's Smash. And most recently, I have been a swing in the Broadway show Hamilton, American musical, for 4 years. Within that time, I've started to gain momentum as a choreographer, and I am currently working on several projects as associate choreographer and choreographer. And I teach. So that's in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's a lot in a nutshell.
Big nutshell.
Yes, most definitely. So that is so you have a lot of experience on stage and on film. How do you was that like interesting transition learning how to perform for the stage and then how to perform for film? I'm sure that it's a very different experience each time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think that, I grew up with the foundation of live theater training and, performing dance live and on stage. And so doing other projects like Smash and being on So You Think You Can Dance was definitely a different type of process. You don't get that immediate audience gratification. You do get the chance to repeat takes and repeat chances to execute your performance, which is awesome. And I think it's fun as a choreographer actually to film dance and to film work because you really can tweak it. But I will say, as a performer and as a dancer, there's nothing compared to the thrill of, you know, dancing and acting and performing live for an audience. So yeah, for sure.
That rush is so different. That's so true. So your career
Yeah.
has been comprised of a lot of different performance and choreography roles, like you said. Which do you prefer?
Oh, I mean, it's definitely apples and oranges.
Mhm.
I think that performing in tandem with choreography is important to me because it only informs like what I do as a choreographer when I still am performing. I'm able to have lots of empathy for my dancers because I know what they go through. But I think that I'm starting to focus a little bit more on choreography, but I never want to lose my skill as a dancer and as a performer. So, I want to try to continue to learn and continue to train and take class, and because it only helps me and helps the influences that create my voice, because that's how I really have created my voices from all the work that I've done with other choreographers in shows, in Broadway shows, or on tour, or in different classes that I gravitate to. Like, the more that I absorb as a dancer, the better choreographer I am. So I think for me, there's not really one existing without the other.
That's yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And um, we spoke about this on a previous episode about how important it is to take all of your experiences in your life, not just one lesson from one thing and applying it to one specific thing, just taking all of it together and applying it to every aspect of your life. That life is a whole big lesson. And so applying that to everything is going to give you the most, reap the most benefits.
Absolutely. And that's such a great point, bringing art into life in general, because even personal experiences, they have come into play when I have been inspired to express like a story through dance, or, different hardships, or moments of joy. Like they inspire creativity. So it would be not productive to deny and to ignore like life when you're creating art, for sure.
That's so true. And so many of the greatest artists of our time, that is what their most famous works have come from, is just their life experiences, because human experience is what we can all relate to. And so of course that's going to become the most popular and well known of their works.
Yes, absolutely. That's so well put. That's the goal, I think, of art and of creating, is to, for me, I think, is to reach the masses and to reach people who don't know what a chaîné turn is, or like a, pas de bourrée, or a fouetté turn, like because then you know that you're touching more than, just people's like movement, their bodies. You're really reaching their hearts, and then to me, that's like the ultimate accomplishment.
Right, most definitely. And that's so much about what this podcast is about. Anyone can move, showing everyone that
Yeah,
dance relates to their life in some way or another, even if they never realized it before. And that, sometimes dance is looked at as this like own little niche thing, like only dancers do that. Like I could never do that.
right.
But it's so universal. Movement is such a universal language that everybody can really understand it if they just try.
Absolutely. That's so well put. I love the name of your podcast.
Thank you so much. Well, I was wondering, doing some research on you and looking at your background, if you could go back and give a message to yourself when you had just started out, just started dancing, what was one thing that you would say?
Oh, um, just started okay. So, I mean, there's several things probably. I think in terms of theater, I would have definitely wanted to just start singing sooner, to be more comfortable with it. I mean, I've had a very healthily successful career in theater, but it could have only helped, like, just to feel more comfortable um, with singing, because it's so necessary with theater. Um, and as far as just the young me as a dancer, I would have I would have loved to start creating a lot sooner. So when I was at NYU, School of the Arts, like, there's just so many resources, especially for choreography. I think that program in particular, like, even more than performance, to be honest, like, there's just incredible resources. There's space. There's so many different showcases throughout the month to be able to present your work. And I wasn't in a choreography headspace yet. I still wanted to, be in people's pieces and perform. So I don't really know if I could have told myself to start creating, but I think, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I just wish that in that period of my life, like, I had been at the place where I could have taken advantage of those resources. So in the end, now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, you can't really force things to happen, in a way that they're not supposed to be.
Yeah,
So everything happens for a reason. But I would have been like, maybe you should use the studio space more, because once you get out, it's like really expensive, and
right. Oh, it's so
you
true.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And it's so interesting growing up as like strictly a dancer a lot of times, at least I've experienced that we're kind of taught that like choreographies for older people, and like you have to build up to
Maybe
that
that
point,
is it.
you
Yeah,
know.
that's so interesting. Well, now with so much of the TikTok culture and the online, the social media dance, culture, I feel like that's been dismantled just a little bit,
Mhm.
um because everyone's, making up a dance or doing the thing and not necessarily calling themselves choreographers, but kind of,
Yeah.
so people are a lot bolder. But that's interesting because that is like a mentality that we have when we're younger. We're like, oh, the choreographers are older, and they're usually men too, like most of the time. But so maybe that, yeah, maybe that's a really, really good point, but hopefully that's not really the case anymore.
I think
Yeah.
that's such a great point that you just made too, though, because I have started to realize that people that's starting to get dismantled with TikTok and social media, and people just like even people who might not have considered themselves dancers, just getting on the app and creating a dance and sharing it, and then before they know it, like a million people have done their dance, and that's been so interesting to see and kind of follow as a dancer and like watch that culture kind of take over a different
I
aspect
know. It's
with.
almost like I don't know if it's good or bad. It's just kind of like, oh, it's happening that way.
Yeah,
Like,
most definitely.
oh,
It's kind of
very
something
strange.
that's incepted into itself. Um,
Yeah.
so another question that I have for you is because you've told us a little bit about all of the experiences that you've had that dance has brought you, what's been your favorite experience so far that you've come to know through dance?
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's been so many for different reasons. Like, and I will say, my time on So You Think You Can Dance, even though it felt very stressful and like just a weird, yeah, I know, strange experience, like that had its own um benefits and memories. I'm dancing as a soloist for like millions of people, was something really, really special. Oh, hello. Oh my gosh. Okay. And then, but being at like my first Broadway show, like you can't really take that. That can't happen again. And then doing West Side
Oh,
choreography.
I
Oh, can
couldn't
you
hear
hear
you
me?
for a second. I just wanted to make sure we had you.
Perfect.
There
Okay.
we go.
Yeah. And so there's been many like special, but I think, my time in the past 4 years has really, we got to do, I joined 6 months after the original cat after the opening of the Broadway show. And so I got to perform with Lynn and with all the original cast members, and we did the Tony Awards together. And there were all these fun things that we did in that first year of the show opening. And to be part of a movement like that, and a story that instills values that were instilled in me, like it's just very important. And I felt very lucky to like just feel like I actually belonged in a cast, in terms of just my ethnicity. Like I've always, kind of felt like kind of like a misfit ethnically in the casting process when it comes to Broadway. There's these like typical Asian shows like Miss Saigon and King and I, where it's really, I'm Filipino American, and it's not really my story. But because there's not a lot of that us, in theater, that we all kind of get grouped together. And I'm not Latina enough to do some things, but I'm not Asian enough. Like it's just kind of, it becomes wishy-washy. But when Hamilton came along, it was literally the show that gave people like me like a place to be. Thank you, love. My fiance just made me coffee, so
Oh, so
thank you.
sweet.
um and we got close like during the show because he's also in the show. So there's a lot of personal moments that were important to me, obviously, creatively, like being a part of this work of art. um and also choreographically, like the 4 years that I was in the show, I was able to really grow. And they would grant me time off from the show to go choreograph my own show, and then I would come back. Like, so I really let my wings like extend, and got to really grow. So I would probably say that time, the time in Hamilton, was is really, really special out of any other moment in my career for sure.
Yeah, that's so incredible. And just thinking about, the Hamilton craze, it's still going on. And entering that experience 6 months in, it had already started to build up such momentum. What was that like entering that cast in the middle of the height of it?
Oh, such a great question. Oh my gosh. It was, first of all, like to meet Lin Manuel and Leslie Odom Jr. and all these. I mean, I did Smash with Leslie, so I knew him before, but to you walk into the building and it already is pulsing like greatness. It sounds so cheesy, but it's like there's just these incredibly talented beings that exist. And on top of that, you're hearing the show every night, and it's just this. Oh, thank you. Just you know this heartbeat of okay, what is my legacy, what is our legacy, like how, like the words of the show, like subliminally, like when you hear them again and again, it just kind of like washes over you, and then you're infused with these ideas. And so I felt like I became a different person for the better, because um and just the standards of excellence like just went up like triple fold, and so, or trifold. But yeah, entering 6 months in, like you feel like you're practically an original cast member, but you're not. You didn't help build the show, but you're completely right. You're able to just be around like the hype that happened in the beginning. So it was very inspiring, and I was very grateful to just be a part of it at such an early stage, and there was only one company at the time. Like now there's multiple companies. We have
Right.
two tours, and like there was a Chicago company. But that first year, like you really did feel quite special. Yeah.
Sure, no doubt, I'm sure. So I remember when it first premiered and everything, seeing all of the celebrities that would like fight tooth and nail to get tickets. Was there a specific person that you got to meet or like knew was in the audience one night that you like were so excited about?
Yeah, I mean, there were a few, like I got excited when Andre 3000 from Outkast came, just because I'm a big fan of his
Yeah.
music. Will Smith was there on, I think, my first performance. And that was really cool. He went on stage and got to talk to the cast. Um, J.K. Simmons, I'm like a really big fan of his randomly. Michael Strahan, I was like obsessed with Kelly and Michael, like the
Yeah.
talk show there. And because I think he's so endearing and charming and fun. And so when I knew he didn't come backstage, but I knew he was watching one night. Yeah, so there've been a lot of fun celebrities who have come and watched the show. And but it becomes like a normal thing. Like sometimes because I'm a swing, so if I'm not on stage, we can leave a little bit earlier than the bows. So sometimes people are like, oh, so and so is backstage, are you gonna stay? I'm gonna stay. And like I'm like, oh, I just want to go home, I'm tired. Like it becomes like such a normal thing for famous people to come see Hamilton. So
Right. I'm sure there was at least one person every night in the audience that people were
yes,
wanting to meet. Yeah.
yeah, have you seen it?
I have not seen it live. I have been
Okay,
like a major fan forever, and I've of
I'm
course
surprised. Has it come to I think it has come to your area, or
it
it's
came
yeah.
to yeah, because I'm from Orlando, and it came to Orlando. It came to the Dr. Phillips Center for the Performing Arts, and
Okay.
they found out a year before it was going to come, and the day that they announced it was going to be there, tickets sold out that day. Like all of the pre-sale tickets sold out.
Wow,
Yeah,
this
like
must have been
a
like
full year
early.
before. Oh yeah. And
Wow.
he
Oh wow.
I have some connections to Dr. Phillips, and I
Yeah.
tried to work them. I was like, "Is there any way I can see?" And they
You're
were like,
like,
"No."
please.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
but it's
Wow.
gonna happen one day. I've
Yeah.
manifested
Oh my
it.
God. It's
It'll
not
happen.
going anywhere. It'll be
Right,
around.
exactly. For sure. Well, for some of our listeners who might not know, you mentioned being a swing. Would you maybe want to explain a little bit about what that means and how that rehearsal process is different for a show?
Yeah, for sure. So a swing is someone who covers the ensemble tracks of a show, and tracks meaning the different parts. So we have to be ready to go on if someone is sick. or it might be planned if there's a vacation, if someone gets hurt and calls out last minute. We always have to be at the theater, but we are not on stage every night. And so the it's a demanding job, and so, and with Hamilton, like, I cover uh 5 female tracks, and there are 4 major dance tracks and then one more of a singer track. So along with the choreography and the staging of each person, you also have to know their vocal harmonies and like what props they pick up and when, not to mention the backstage choreography where you're changing and you have to know where to dress because you don't want to ruin the flow of the what's going on backstage, for safety. So, I mean, the big thing about being a swing is really knowing where to fit in the puzzle and when, and just being smart about safety. You are there to fit in the puzzle piece and to make sure the show continues safely. Um, and you make mistakes, like, and I think that was the hardest thing about starting, because this is the first show I've swung before, and I'm fine with it because I had done so many other shows where I've been on stage, and at this point, I wanted to focus more on choreography, so it kind of frees up some brain space um once the show is running, or once you know all your tracks, you're kind of like, you have a little bit more brain space. But in the beginning, for the first probably 6 months, like, you're really getting your runs in for each of the tracks, and making your mistakes and learning from your mistakes. It's a very humbling job, but it's also one that not everyone can do. So, you have to be super skilled, quick thinking, and yeah, you just kind of make it work. And so that's why we are paid a little bit more, not a lot more, but we
As
are,
you should be. Yeah.
yeah, we really do save the show. And it's always good to be nice to your swings, especially if you're on stage, because they will back you up and they'll be there if you're out. And so it's a hard job, but I have so much respect for anyone who swings a show, because that means that they're smart.
Yeah, for sure. Did you ever have an experience where you had to go on for a track in the middle of the show?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been called 5 minutes after the show begins. I've been called during intermission while I'm taking a nap, you
Right.
know, eating a sandwich. And again, like 2, 3, 4 years in, I I'm definitely not nervous anymore to, jump in if it's last minute or whatever. I also feel like, I mean, a lot of the swings in Hamilton, particularly, for the most part, some of us have been there for longer than the onstage cast. Like, a lot of onstage cast people, original people, have left. So we feel comfortable. We're just comfortable in the building. We're comfortable on stage. We know the show really well. So that level of comfort is super important when swinging, because then, I mean, I have to admit, like, in the beginning, when I'm doing as a swing coming into the show with the original cast, it's quite intimidating. You're there. I don't want to like mess up Lynn's performance or David's performance by doing the wrong thing or being in the wrong space. So it's easy to kind of get in your head about those things. But at the end of the day, you're just trying to help the show make it work, and no one dies. Like, you did
Right.
your job.
Yeah, yeah, no one
you
got hurt.
know,
Success.
yeah,
Right. So you
exactly.
mentioned a little bit about how being a swing was able to open up some space mentally for you to be able to work on choreography. What does your choreographic process look like?
Ah, okay. I love these segues too. You're so good. Yeah, so, well, it depends on what I'm choreographing. So, I teach every week at Broadway Dance Center, which I'm so grateful for because it just allows me to create my vocabulary and like how I like to move or what I'm feeling that day, just like a dance combination, the movement aspect of choreography, the nitty-gritty of the vocab, that I'm grateful for having that. And so creating dance combos for class is obviously quite different from choreographing a full-blown show, right? A full-blown musical. So for class, I wait till like 3 hours before class. I wake up that morning, I'm like listening to music. What am I feeling this day? I've realized that for me, I enjoy that immediate and spontaneous inspiration more than like planning a week before and like doing, I can do that too, but I find that sometimes my mood changes and the day of, I'm like, I don't feel like doing that anymore. So I enjoy doing it the day of, and then I'm excited when I come to class because I'm like, oh, I have this fresh, idea that I want to share. In terms of a musical, like you have a little bit more time to kind of prep, and you have a lot of collaboration involved with the music director and the director and set designer, costumes, so it depends on the show. But obviously, like for a musical, you want to be cohesive with the other designers and creatives, like the writers and the director, because you all have the same goal, and it's to tell the story. The priority is story when it comes to choreographing for musicals. So I always want to be mindful of that, obviously. And like for that, if you have pre-production, then we'll get into a room and I'll ask dancers to come into a room and share what the idea is, and we'll just workshop movement. I definitely move really fast. Like I love to get, like how I mentioned about creating for class for Broadway Dance Center. Like I like to create quickly because for me, like the fresh instinctual ideas are the best for
Mhm.
me, usually. Yeah. And so I like to throw it out there. So I usually like to work with dancers who have really quick minds and can pivot really fast, and like scratch an idea, do another idea, like whatever, because it helps my process, because that's how I like to work. um and yeah.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And when you're talking about choreographing for a musical, I think sometimes to the general public, people might not understand and it might be misconceived that every time you start a new musical process like that, the choreography is brand new. I think a lot of people might think that if this show has been done before, then the same choreography is going to be used no matter where it's being done. And that's so
Sure.
not true, because you might have a director who's wanting to take the show in a completely different way that wasn't the original cast's way. And so you need to choreograph to adhere to that. And so that's really interesting to hear about, the kind of pre production part and like making all of those ideas mesh and make sense together.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so true. That was beautifully put. Like, you want to respond to what the director is asking, or every dynamic is different. Maybe the relationship is more give and take and collaborative, and like they could be very open to your ideas for the direction of the show, but you want to respect whatever dynamic is set into place. And like you said, like if you're doing a revival or another version, like I did a version of In the Heights at Virginia Repertory, and it was exciting because my director was very open to my own interpretation. And I love that show. I always wanted to be in it, and I've seen it, a million times on Broadway. But I also have my voice and like what I feel is exciting for me. And so, he was very open about me executing that. And so, but so it all, like you said, like it all depends on what the director, what the collaboration, or what the goal of the particular production is.
Right.
Because then that will inform like what you're trying to create as a choreographer. And in pre-production, it's like you have to remember what those goals are and not get carried away with like, ooh, look at this cool step. Like it's like, because
Right.
then it doesn't really fit in the world of the show. Like you have to remember what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's such a great point too. That as much as I grew up a competition dancer, and
Yeah.
obviously competition dance is so huge everywhere, um,
Yes.
but it has definitely fostered a culture of tricks are big, and you want to do something that looks flashy because that might get you the title that you want. But in the artistic, quote unquote, side of things,
Yeah.
that might not be what is going to read the best to the audience. It might be jarring for an audience to see a girl doing a front aerial and no, everybody else is standing still, so that's a really interesting point to make in the sense of keeping the story, the goal of the story for the audience to
Yes.
understand. Right.
Absolutely.
So
I
interesting.
think that's definitely also, like you mentioned the word I think you said sophisticated. Yeah, like it's just a level of maturity and understanding of what the big picture is too.
Right.
And again, it depends on what you're creating. Like I do a lot of my own self-produced like concept videos that I just really enjoy doing, and that's actually they've gotten me some work and they've gotten me a little bit of attention, from like whatever producers or directors or whatever, but like it really is just my own expression, and but for that, like I can do whatever I want because I am the choreographer, I am the director, I am the conceiver of whatever idea, so for that I'm like, well then let's, you know do my priority is like the music or the movement inspired by the music, and so when you have all that control, like, do definitely like go for it. And like you mentioned competition, when you're choreographing dances for competition, yeah, like it's just that person on stage if it's a solo or if it's a group number, whatever, but it's like you have the reins of like what's your priority? Is it the story? Is it the movement? Because it can be either. You can do whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's you have that ability to pick and choose what you want your priority to be. That's such a great point. And you mentioned your choreography for like conceptual videos, and you talked a
Mhm.
little bit about earlier how choreographing for film is so different because you once you have that film you can kind of manipulate it to how you want it to look in post production and stuff. Do you think about when you're choreographing for a film like that, do you think about how you want to manipulate it beforehand, or do you wait
Oh.
until afterwards?
Well, so that's interesting. I now have come to um befriend some videographers that I really trust,
Yeah.
and they have their own directorial mind that I respect. And so then it becomes more of a really great collaboration, and I am able to release a little bit of my, preconceived like ideas of what I want the end product to be, because I really do appreciate like their ideas. So in the beginning I definitely was like, well, I think I want to do this, but I really like when there is someone who's capturing my movement or my videos that has their own point of view,
Right.
because what I can still do, because it's still my video and I'm still producing it, I can still let them know what is important to me in terms of ideas or the shots you want to get. But then besides those main, things that are important to me, I'm very open to how one interprets it. And then after we see a draft of it, because I love it. I love being like, okay, what so these are the guidelines, this is the story goal, these are the main shots I'd love to get, and then this is I don't want slow motion, I want this, if there are like certain things that are non-negotiables, right? And then I'm like, but show me what, and then with that, like, what would you do? And then
Right.
so then I love getting that first draft because I'm like, oh wow, I would have never thought of that. Or that's cool, but I don't want that. And then so and everyone is like open and collaborative, and communicative. So then we can, at the end of the day, it's still gonna be what I want. But I love like someone who can riff off of what I give them to begin with. Because I don't I love collaborating, but I don't like I'm not a control freak, because I think that when you invite more ideas into the mix, like it only makes your stuff better.
Mhm.
Um, but I do have very clear thoughts in the beginning about like, what we're trying to say. So yeah, that's a great question though.
Yeah, and it's so that sounds like it must be such an effective way to work on a project like that because
Mm,
dancers are very typically type A, like super straight to the point. We
yeah,
know that we can do it the way that we want to do it and it'll be good. So it's
yeah,
hard to tear down that wall sometimes of like, okay, like other people's ideas are valid and we need to accept them and welcome them in sometimes because like I mean, our whole career and process is like a tendu is a tendu and a plie is a plie and everything's set in stone. So when you have that fostered so often in your life, it's really hard to kind of take that down. That makes so much sense though that that process would be super fulfilling too to, collaborate and watch your initial idea be transformed into something that you might not even thought of initially. That's really interesting.
That is such a great point. Oh, can you still hear me? Oh, this one's not working. Okay. Um, but it's funny that you talk about like the movement and like, oh, a tandu is a tandu, because I will say, in the most recent video I did for Filipino Heritage Month, I did make one of my non-negotiables was like the movement is quite important. Like there was in the choruses, like I was like, I want to see all the movement. Like I don't want us to like cut away or do like a slow-mo. Like I need to see the eights in time, and so because we are dancers, and I'm like, if I'm creating vocabulary, I'm like, that's really important
Right.
for that video in particular, because when we, like you said, like if we want to get like super artistic and stylistic
Right.
with videos, which we can, then that's a whole nother journey, and I'm open to that too, but there's a right time and place for it, like for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Well, one of the last questions I'd like to ask you, you've gotten to talk to us a lot about the different people you've gotten the experience to work with. But is there a person you would most like to work with that you haven't yet in the dance world?
Oh my gosh, I did see this question in the prep, and I was like, I didn't know how to answer. It's like, wow, I haven't really like thought about, and just in general, any
Yeah,
like as a
anyone.
dancer, as a choreographer. Oh man, let's see. I well, I mean, I always wanted to. Recently I've been like, oh, Tyler Peck was like a, jazz dancer turned like ballerina. Like I think she's just so talented. But I actually just got to work with her on the Kennedy Center honors. I was associate choreographer to Sergio. Yeah. And she and Desmond Richardson have did a duet. So it's cool. But it wasn't my choreography. So maybe, like in the future, like I'd love to, and we met, and like now, like we know each other, and she's fantastic. So she's one I love working with dancers. I think why I say her name is because she's incredibly versatile, and so someone who has that technical foundation and the discipline, but then can abandon also and just free themselves of that. I also have such a respect choreographically for Wade Robson.
Mhm.
It like I love his movement and the what he his music choices, and like I love his vibe, and I think like the fusion or the intersection of funk and jazz and a little bit of hip hop, a little like it. I like movement that's not defined,
Mhm.
and I know sometimes that's weird for people because like it's that. But at this point, like like I stopped calling. I still teach theater jazz at Broadway Dance Center, but I really like just calling it jazz because I have a jazz foundation. But at this point, for Broadway shows and for theater, like you can apply any type of movement to a story or telling a story. So I don't really know at this point in time what theater dance is. And I'd like us to be open, like to just that movement is movement. And, to me, like fusing different perspectives makes movement exciting, and I like to work with dancers who can execute that as well, and who are open and not like, oh, I'm like a hip hop dancer, or oh, I'm like a this, like I'm like at this point, like what does that even, like let's just get down.
Especially
um
considering
yeah,
theater dance and how Hamilton was. Like you look at the choreography in Hamilton, and it is not traditional theater, musical theater like performance.
yeah,
That's definitely at least where I've seen the future of theater going is just kind of letting it be what it
absolutely.
is. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Just existing. And, now theater is also a lot more based in realism.
Mhm.
So we still have our quote unquote plug and play musicals, and like some of the revivals are coming back, but the structure of musicals and the structure of how choreography is implemented into a show has also changed drastically. Like it's now I mean, especially in Hamilton is a great example, obviously, that, the ensemble is just infused like throughout the entire show. Like we're on stage the whole time, and we act as this kind of Greek chorus, or the support emotional support of the main characters. Like we're not just, okay, it's the dance number, it's time to go on stage, so it's a completely different environment, um, when it comes to what you can create in the story. So that's exciting to me.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Carla, thank you so much for being on today. This has been such an incredible conversation. I'm so glad we got to have you on the show. I'd love for you to let our listeners know where they can follow you, where they can follow your dance journey. If there's anything you'd like to let people know that you have coming up, that would be awesome.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. My handle is Carla, Karla, Puno, Puno Garcia, Carla Puno Garcia. And I usually post all my updates there. I teach at Broadway Dance Center. I'll be back in New York in July, and I think things are opening up. So if you're in New York, come and take class on Mondays. Yeah, and I'm just so grateful to have talked to you. You're so wonderful and so insightful and smart.
Thank you so much. Well, it was so great to meet you today, and just thank you again for being on the show. And we look forward to hopefully talking to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No problem. Have a good
See
one.
you
Bye.
soon. You too. Bye.
Well, there you have it. That was so much fun. I feel like talking to somebody who, like I said earlier, has gotten to experience so many things that um, dancers dream of. And talking about one of my favorite things in the world, Hamilton, um, was so great. We just had so much fun. And again, Hamilton is a topic that I could talk about for a really long time. And so having somebody to indulge me in that was really nice. But I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Anyone Can Move. And as always, listeners, remember to keep moving, stay curious, and stay confident. Have a good one.